Ken Mary, drummer, FLOTSAM and JETSAM, and of course, Michael, long time, I guess, co-founder. Is that fair to say, co-founder, all the way back in the day of FLOTSAM and JETSAM?
Way back in the dinosaur days. Jimmy, it's always nice to talk to you, man. It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you. It's good to see you, Ken. Ken, did I meet you at NAMM one year?
I believe you did, yes.
Yeah, it was outside, I think.
I believe
probably
so.
Bumped each other. Yeah. Well, good to see you both.
Good to see you.
Good news. This album friggin' kicks ass. I was kind of worried. I didn't know if you guys could top the last album or the one before that or the one before that. But geez. I Am the Weapon. Last album was killer. This album seems to be even more killer. What did you do for the people who haven't heard it? I'll ask Mike first, and then I could ask Ken. What did you do different, or what do you think the band did differently this album compared to the last album?
From my perspective, I didn't do too much different. I just write a bunch of songs. I spawn whatever music material I can, and I ship it off to these guys, to Ken and AK, to add lyrics and melody lines and stuff on top of whatever kind of foundation I can lay down, And usually it's either Steve Conley or me that come up with the riffs. Ken does too sometimes, being an ultra producer. He's our Swiss Army knife in this band. He does a little bit of everything. And, once we write about 25 songs each and then ship them over to these guys, and then they dice them, slice them, and they come back like real songs.
Ken, I'm listening to the drumming on this album, and I go, how do you stay in shape to drum this way? This is some serious drumming here. I get tired just painting, for about 2 minutes. I don't even this is some serious drumming on this album. I mean, how do you outdo yourself?
Well, honestly, people ask me, they go, well, how do you do that? And one of the things that works for me, I don't know if it would work for everybody, but I stay away from sugar. Especially when I'm touring, I try to eliminate all sugar, alcohol, and caffeine. When I'm recording or whether I'm touring, and I know that sounds very brutal for most people. I talked to my sister one time about it. I said, because she was having aches and pains, I said, well, try eliminating coffee. And she goes, no, there's no way. I don't want to live if I can't have coffee. And I'm like,
yeah.
So people wonder, for me, that's kind of what works. If I eliminate those three things, drink lots of water, try and rest, well, and all of those kinds of things. And if you can do that, I think that you'll physically be able to do things, whether it's drums or maybe athletics. I think you'll be able to do those things longer, because they do cause inflammation. And I think that that's really the thing. As you're getting older, it's not exactly as easy to do these things, as when you were 20. So you do have to make changes.
Yeah.
Those to me are the three main food groups.
Alcohol, sugar, and caffeine.
That's all I need.
Angus Young has a chocolate bar right before he goes on stage, just so he can keep going that way, keep going, keep energize our buddy. But I hear you, Ken. I mean, to do this is like some serious workout. It's a serious workout, right? Playing this way or this style. I mean, drum blasts and just off the charts, man.
This is the only band I've ever played in that I had to actually get in shape for. Like when we go tour, I actually have to, prepare and actually rehearse. Like every other band I've ever played in, I'd never had to rehearse. I could just, show up, play. I don't want to mention names, but certain bands, I could not play the songs for a year, sit down, behind a kit of drums and be able to play fine. So this material is definitely, like you said, it's very challenging for sure.
Michael, what can fans now expect? Are there many differences from the last album to this album?
Well, what's going on right now is that a lot of these, like the festivals and these shows that we've been doing, we've had a lot of older material, the classic material at Doomsday and No Place for Disgrace off of those records. And we are having some fans coming up to us and saying, we didn't even know you had a new record out, and that's a little bit alarming for us. So I think we're going to start gearing up to do more of our newer our newer stuff and less of the classic. And there's a few reasons for it. One of the main reasons is we're appealing to a different audience now too, like power metal. I hate to put everything in genres and stuff like that, but the people that listen to power metal are locking on to AK and the giant choruses, you know. So we're trying to incorporate more of that in there, and you know, it's a new re-emergence of the band, I guess you could say, 4 records ago, and we're on a trajectory that it seems to be working well for us.
I remember when you came back in the band, you know, the first question everybody asks you, where's Jason Newsted? Is he ever going to come back? But I mean, that is long gone. That conversation has disappeared at this point, correct?
Yeah, it only took us 30 years to prove that. I mean, he's a great bass player and a great songwriter and ultra talented, but he wasn't the one thing that made this band FLOTSAM and JETSAM. You know, it was a conglomeration of all the members for sure.
Yeah, Ken, what's the evolution of drumming and thrash? Now,
well, I think,
going back to the early FLOTSAM records, and you listen to them today, there's somewhat of a difference. But go ahead.
Well, there is, and then at the same time, you know, like if you look at what Kelly was doing back in 1985, 1986, he was so far ahead of the curve that what he was playing back then is still challenging today. So, you know, I think metal drumming has always been the edge of drumming, like in terms of it's always where the envelope is being pushed. Yeah. And I think today more so than ever, that's true. You know, like in the old days, we used to think like 200 beats a minute on 16th note double kicks, which I know probably doesn't mean anything to anybody that's listening, but you know, we thought certain things were impossible. And now people are surpassing those quote unquote boundaries and have, you know, for a few years now. So there's a lot of boundaries that have been pushed. And it seems to me that it's always happening in the metal arena. I think thrash metal is, you know, it's part of that obviously as well. So I think it's something where, you know, yeah, if you're trying to drum in the style, you better really have your crap together. You know, it's not like playing you know, old school rock or something like that. It's definitely something that will keep you in shape and kind of kick your butt.
Mike, some new songs off the new album. A New Kind of Hero. And I know AK's not here to defend his lyrics, but I'm pretty sure you have an idea of what everything's all about. Tell me about the theme behind A New Kind of Hero.
Let's let Ken roll with this a little bit. He had a big part in the lyrics for this song.
Well, basically the song is essentially, you know, if you think of, you know, traditional Superman or any superhero from the past, you know, they're always like, you know, truth, justice, and then they're really, you know, they're going to be there. They're going to save you. They're going to just rush right in and be right there. And so we were trying to think of, well, okay, Superman's dead now, and what's the hero like that takes his place? And he's more of like a, you know, he's a different kind of hero. He doesn't care as much. He's not as worried about getting to the root of the problem. he's not as worried about showing up. It's like, yeah, you know, I know you're gonna die, and I know things are really looking bad. I'm gonna be there. I just need a little bit of time. I need a few minutes. I mean, I'm finishing up this video game, and you know, I don't worry about it. I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there. So that's kind of the you know, AK's always been very tongue in cheek, and that's kind of the, you know, that's kind of the, I guess, the seed for this song is trying to think of like, okay, if Superman's dead, what's the new hero like? And that's kind of what we envisioned for a new hero. You know, it's like he'd be a little bit more relaxed about his approach.
well, I mean, AK, that video with AK, you know, flying and smoking at the same time, that's a great video, by the way. It is.
Thanks.
It is.
Dude, we didn't use any special effects for that. He can
Burn My Bridges. I don't know if anyone want to answer that, Mike or Ken. Burn My Bridges. You know, a very melodic chorus. And in some ways, it's a throwback to the 80s on the chorus. Because I guess that's the beauty of FLOTSAM and JETSAM, right? You guys always thrashing, always going fast. But when the chorus comes in, there is a sense of melody, right?
I know what you're saying. I mean, and it's kind of a weird song in terms of we didn't really think it was going to be a single at all. and some people at the label really loved it. I think that's the one cool thing about this record. I saw one review where the guy said, well, the band didn't take any chances. And I was like, I don't know what that guy's smoking, because like the band took more chances on this record than, any of the last 3 records. I mean, there's a lot of diversity in these songs. There's some that are super fast, some that are super thrash, some that are like super melodic. I think there's a little bit wider range on this album. And I think Burn My Bridges specifically, I think people are really connecting with that. It's kind of a moody song. It's kind of a moody piece. And I think the one line that I've heard over and over again, people are saying, it's just kicking their butts, is, I burned all my bridges and now I have no way home. It's sort of like it's sort of a melancholy song, and it has like it has a mood to it, and there's a storm, and there's something happening. There's a visual that's attached to the song, and I think it's touching a lot of people. So I think that's what you're asking about. I think you're asking me, like, why is that song, moving people? It does have a great melodic hook. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to kind of add in a little bit of that, where when people see us live at festivals or whatever, that they can sing along with us, because we've been able to do that for the last few albums with songs like Demolition Man, and there's so many songs we have that have those kind of choruses. So I think that's one of the things we really like to do, is give people something that they can sing along with, especially when we're playing live.
But also the lyrics they're like a snapshot of the era that we live in. And I think AK does a great job in being very general about those lyrics, but at the same time, they hit home, or they connect with people.
Sure.
Again, maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's how I feel about it. And not only in this album, but the albums in the past, that you can connect because there is a timestamp on it. At least that's how I see it. When a song like The Head of the Snake, I don't know what that can be, but I'm assuming it.
So Head of the Snake, that really is just talking about, if you look at our media, for instance, and I don't care what side of the media you're on, if you believe all of what you're hearing from one side of the media, you're going to be pretty screwed up. And basically, in my opinion, we're being pitted against each other. People are being pitted against each other. And this is all being caused by, it's a serpentine attitude that has crept into our media, where it's like they don't care about the truth any longer. They just care about getting clicks, getting views, and getting people angry at each other so that they can get clicks and views. And I think that's a really dangerous thing. And so Head of the Snake is like, that needs to be stopped, and it's like that is the snake. The media, in my opinion, is doing some horrible things, and a very big disservice, to pretty much everybody. It's like, I don't understand the disharmony and the attempt at if you're doing your job, you should be unifying people, not dividing people, and they're doing the exact opposite.
Well, I always tell people, well, this newscast, is this more left wing or right wing? They go, well, it's left. I go, what about these guys? Are they more left or right? They go, right. I go, shouldn't news be neutral? Should we not be having two different sides, sort of like pulling people from side to side? And look, what's happened is it's actually social media that has destroyed the fabric of everything, because that's the clicks. Those are the headlines that draw people to click. And that sort of thins out what the news actually is. All right, Michael, I'm going to ask you this question.
All right.
What's your favorite song on this album?
Oh, New Kind of Hero. I like the opening track. It slaps you right in the face, like right from the get-go. But you know what? I rarely listen to the albums in their entirety after we're done. Blood in the Water, I listen to that. And the reason why I do is because I'm just proud of the work that we've all done on it. I mean, the last 2 records are the best we've ever done. And so I'm so proud of these guys and all the work what we've accomplished from it. I go back and listen to it, and I hear different stuff. I hear stuff that Bill did that I didn't catch, or I don't know. It's just they're two of my favorite records that we've ever done.
It was probably what, 2 years to make this album, a year and a half.
Yeah, but we always derail ourselves, and we right in the middle of it, we always do a tour, so yeah, and we're like, we're not going to do that this time, but we still do it every time, and then it just sets us back a little bit, and then you have to get Game Face back on in order to start up again. It's like running out of gas. You got to prime your vehicle again to get it started.
Yeah. That reminds me, like I was reading Blabbermouth today, and there was an article on Mark Tornillo, and he said, and I guess he meant it in the sense that it's a lot easier to tour and make a living in Europe than it is in America, just as a general statement. And what are your thoughts on it, Mike and Ken? Do you find that then again, you're an American band, so if you're in Europe, maybe that would change the scenario. But what are your thoughts? Is it easier to tour and make a living in the Europe versus the US?
I think so. That's kind of like the mecca for our, this genre of music. Over here, it doesn't. I think maybe because everything's so spread out here, it's hard for like the festivals and everything that happen over there for that to get going over here. I think it's way more difficult. But they're really tight knitted over there as far as a group of metal people. Here they seem just a little more spread out and a little less I don't want to offend anybody, but like a little less connected maybe, but we're trying to change that. We try to make good records and just trying to change that.
Ken, what are your thoughts? What are the sort of the cultural differences in metal Europe versus North America?
Well, I think from what I've seen, if you look at Europe, they're open. They never stopped loving metal. And the weird thing in the United States, I feel like metal is actually squashed on social media, on things like YouTube. I think they restrict metal. I'm not sure exactly why or what the reasoning is, but metal is huge everywhere else in the world. Like if you look at, let's take a band like Arch Enemy, for instance. They'll play huge festivals in Europe. They'll play in front of 500,000 people in South America, huge shows in Japan. They come to the United States and play House of Blues with 1,000 people. So you tell me what's going on. How can a band and how can a genre be huge everywhere else, but not in the United States? I think there's a concerted effort to
same thing in Canada, right? I'm in Canada, so it's the same thing, more or less. The U.S.
Yeah, I think like the United States and Canada, it seems kind of squashed to me, and I see that in YouTube specifically. It seems to me like metal is there's some new metal. There's a few bands here and there that are doing okay, but by and large, there's not like a whole genre doing well. In the United States, all the metal community in the United States, I think has a very difficult time because there's really no outlet for it, and it's not organized. Just like Mike said, I think the fans, they aren't as connected. In Europe, there's a huge metal scene, and everybody is connected, and everybody goes to the festivals, and everybody loves the music, and it really doesn't matter. Are you death metal? Are you thrash metal? Are you just metal? Are you a melodic metal? Whatever you are, the fans embrace everything. They're not going okay, I'm only a thrash metal fan, so I will only listen to thrash metal. I think that happens maybe a little more in the United States too, where somebody goes, okay, I like a specific genre, a very specific area of a genre, and I'm not going to listen to anything else. I think that happens maybe a little bit more in the US, but I do think in terms of the mechanics, in terms of the industry, I think that there is an effort, in my opinion, to elevate things like rap and pop and to sort of push metal to the wayside. And I think part of the success that has caused that is this dividing it up into 50, 100 different subcategories. I think that really helped kind of defray it and kind of sort of makes it not a force that has to be dealt with. And I think, like I said, there's a few bands here and there that kind of buck the trend, but for the most part, that's what I'm seeing in the United States.
Why is it working a lot better over there versus here, and how can we fix it? That's what
how about everywhere else it's huge except for the United States? How is that possible? I think it's only possible through control, and it's control of the media and control of social media too. I mean, there's a lot of things that get blocked. I noticed this when we share something, like let's say I share something about Flotsam and Jetsam on my Facebook page.
Okay.
I do notice that like a lot of like sometimes I'll have 20 people share something that I shared, and if I click on their share, there's like one person that has looked at what they've shared, and you're thinking to yourself, you're going, okay, 20 people shared it, so there should be like 10 more people, sharing off there, and it should go viral and it should expand. So how is that not happening? And I think
but they have Facebook over there too, right? I mean, are the same sort of algorithms the same there as they are here? I don't know.
Well, that I don't know, but I can tell you the algorithm here is definitely, in my opinion, is skewing things, and maybe not just metal, but it seems like with music, they're very careful to. I think to some degree, they're concerned about becoming the next MySpace or something like that. Like MySpace towards the end just became this social media network that was all about promoting bands, and I think somewhere at Facebook, somebody's very concerned about that, and they don't want to see that happen with Facebook. That's my theory anyway.
Anyways, Michael, what do you want to say?
Yeah, Europe it's like a season, it's winter, spring, metal, and fall. Because the summertime, everybody shuts down and they go to all these festivals and they all travel, they all do it. That's what we need here too. We need that season in the United States where people can take off.
Here in Montreal, we have winter, summer, and construction. So one season is just strictly construction. But there must be something that they're doing. I don't know if it's Facebook. I don't know if it's algorithms. How does that culture come to be, and how does everybody sort of unite? There's got to be a starting point somewhere on top, I would think. Maybe it's always just been like that. Maybe the people are just like that. It's ingrained in their societies. I don't know. It's sad. It's sad because the US and Canada were the leaders at one point, right?
Yep.
In metal. Is it the radio? Is it the labels? Is that part of it? Is they don't. If radio was to play Flotsam and Jetsam every single day, 10 times a day, would it make a difference?
Yes.
It would. Yeah,
it absolutely would. I think, you're just talking about getting a song into the public consciousness. So if you have a song that's being played all the time, every day, and getting into the public consciousness, there's going to be a large percentage of people that are going to like that song. So, because we do like what we're familiar with. If we hear something and we become familiar with a song, then we tend to like it. I mean, that's why classic rock radio is bigger now than it ever has been. I mean, people are listening to like Led Zeppelin and Cream and all these 60s and 70s bands, and it's not stopped. I mean, we're talking, 50 years later, people are still listening to this. And a lot of young kids are still listening to us because it's something that's getting into their consciousness because they're hearing it on the radio. So radio play, I think, is still important. I don't think it's as important as it used to be in the past, but I still think it's a very important tool.
Yeah.
We have a radio station here that even if we were to write like Cherry Pie or something that big, they still wouldn't play us. They're just, and I hate to say that too, but that's they just won't touch us with a 10-foot pole.
I remember back in the 80s, and it's basically what you're saying. We didn't have other mediums. We just had radio. So you stood by your radio and you didn't have any other distractions other than playing hockey on the street, at least here. And you would just listen to a song, and then you'd tape a song that you really wanted. You'd wait all day to hear it. And then video came along, and then we were glued to our TV. We tried to record what was on video, and we capture those songs. So it plays a big role when the mass media supports artists. I just find it strange, but whatever. Maybe that's the charm of metal anyways.
I have a story about that. When I lived in Northern California, they were playing Fire Down Under from Riot. They were playing that song all the time. And I used to sit there and wait for it so I could press play and record on my tape recorder so I could just listen to it over and over and over. I still have the tape floating around someplace, and it's missing the whole beginning riff, just because I just missed the beginning riff, getting excited trying to record it. But yeah.
But I could tell you in Europe, when I was a teenager in Europe, my parents used to bring me to Europe. and we spent our summers there. And I used to go to stores, and they did a lot of bootlegging, like a lot. That was their radio and that was their TV by bootlegging all these tapes. And I used to walk into a store and they go, well, don't spend whatever drachmas it is on this album. Here, for like $2, $3, you can have a tape with all the bands of metal bands that you never heard before in Europe. And that's what they did. But that has translated into what it is today. That was their internet. That was their internet essential. Back in the day. Yeah. Tape
so essential to the growth of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Back to the album. Beneath the Shadows. That's like a swing beat, Ken. You're integrating a little bit of swing in there. Am I wrong?
No, it's definitely a swing groove. And that's that's Mike. Mike is the instigator of that song. So you should, Mike, you want to?
Mike, it's your turn. We're pass the mic to Mike.
Ken called me up one day and said, hey, we need to write something that's a little, I forget how you described it. Was it choppy or I forget. You wanted something. You were looking for something. And that's what I ended up coming up with. And I don't think any of these guys liked the riff. I think they were just like, what the hell? Because everybody says it sounds like ZZ Top. I hope I don't ruin it for anybody right now. But now that you listen to it, you're going to go, oh, yeah, okay, that's
ZZ
LaGrange.
Top, yeah.
It's not LaGrange, that's for sure.
But that's just what happened that night, and I sent it over to him, and him and AK put lyrics to it, and it had a super catchy chorus, like every song on this record. So it just worked.
Is vinyl sales that significant that it's sort of like it's helping the bands sort of recover from the lost CD sales and the downloading sales? Is it really that much of an impact, or is it just like, yeah, we sell a few albums and it's no big deal? It just, put in the till. I mean, has vinyl helped in the past years?
I can answer that if you want.
Whoever wants to answer it.
I mean, it helps a little bit. It has not. Let's put it this way: the record industry reached its peak in like around 2002, 2003, and it used to be about a $50 billion industry every year. Now it's about a $5 or $6 billion industry. So it's 1/10 the size of what it used to be in terms of an industry from the actual music. The other thing that's weird is 70% of the revenue right now from music is from classic albums that already existed, from the 70s and 80s, 60s. That's where 70% of the revenue is. So streaming is a complete travesty, in my opinion. I think it's horrible. I think it did a horrible thing in terms for the artist and the industry. I think it's very destabilizing. I mean, basically, we don't see any money from the music. As a matter of fact, we even talk about it amongst ourselves. We're like, well, we're going to make an album. Why are we doing it? We're basically doing it because we love making music. And we want to give our fans something new. We love our fans, and we love the process of making music. But I don't know. We saw literally, well, I'm not going to say nothing from it, but for the amount of time that we put into creating a record, we pretty much saw nothing from it. So yeah, I do think vinyl, it helped a little bit. But if you look at the actual numbers and what we've lost in terms of what streaming has done, if you look at the music business on a graph, it's like a plane going down, really, because, when iTunes took off in around 2005, now all of a sudden, instead of selling a CD, you would sell one song for 99 cents. So instantly your gross margin was cut down by 90%. And then from streaming, now you're streaming and now everything's it's even worse. So, if you're doing this for some other reason, like you're trying to get rich off of it, I would suggest you not do it. I would suggest if you're doing this because you love it and you love your fans and you love the art, that's great. But that's why we're doing it. We're not doing it to get rich.
And he's the statistician too. So if you ever want stats, yes, Ken, he's got them all.
What's interesting? In a way, streaming, at the start of streaming, it was actually favorable for bands because before streaming, people were illegally downloading music, like on on Napster and platforms like that. So bands were getting absolutely nothing. But then they go, you know what? Let's start streaming. And that's kind of a little revenue, but it's not enough. It's just not enough. I don't know.
Well, think about it. So for, let's say, you have Spotify for what, $10.99, $11 or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can access every bit of music that exists on the planet. I mean, okay, so if you figure it's $11, so that's the price of buying, 12 albums a year. You can access absolutely everything under the sun. Like in the past, when we used to have to buy records, I mean, you would work hard, you'd save up your money, you'd buy a record, you'd have a real connection with that record because you invested into it. Rick Beato has a great video on his site. He said, this is why music has become valueless, because there's so much of it. It doesn't cost anything anymore for people. They don't have to invest in it. They get it basically for free at this point. And so, how do you bring the value of music back? I mean, we try to do it by just making sure that every song we do on a record is a great song. And we really made every effort to do that. Really on the last 3 albums and even the album before that. I wasn't in the band on the self-titled, but I think all of these last 4 records, I think you can listen and you're not going to find one song where you go like, oh, this is this song shouldn't be on this record or something like that. So I think that, we really tried to increase the value of what we're doing, hopefully by, making better and better songs.
I think you have. And you know what? Good on you. Black Wings. That's a great song. It's a great closer. I'm not sure who was involved in that one. Was it Mike?
That's all AK actually.
Or that's all AK.
And is that yours, Mike's, or is that Steve's music?
That's Steve's.
Yeah. So on that song, we actually almost used that as the title for the record. The record was almost going to be called Black Wings. The only thing that it was hard to describe, like, well, what does that mean? We had our road crew was out on tour with us, and we were going through the song titles, and we said Black Wings, and they were like, it's okay. And then we said, I Am the Weapon. They're like, oh, that's cool. So, and they're a bunch of metalheads, so we kind of went like, oh, wow, maybe that's the ticket there. But Black Wings, I think is one of the best songs on the record. That's one of my favorites.
Same, and it's got that epic feel because there's a little more keyboards, like they're just floating in the background, which brings the epicness a little higher. And speaking of I Am the Weapon, whose idea was that for that song?
As far as the it's a title that I had for a number of years, and when AK and I discussed lyrics, and I was telling him, I have these different song titles. I've got this and this and this, and then I spit out like 5 song titles, and he goes, I Am the Weapon. Yeah, that's a cool one. Let's do that one. So that's kind of, we usually kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And so that's kind of how that happened.
So you get a cool title, then you work the lyrics around that title and the music around that, correct?
Yeah. Well, Steve had the music, I think, for that one. And, but yeah, it's a song that sort of, just kind of, I mean, like all of these songs, I think we all just get together and just start putting stuff in a vat and start mixing it up. And then we start finishing them off and just seeing which songs are actually, moving everybody. And the cool thing is everybody in this band is a great writer. And I think everybody in the band really kind of knows when something's right and when something's wrong. And I think that really helps, because if we're ever stuck on something, like if I need a new part, I can call Mike and say, hey, this is cool, but this bridge isn't working. Can we get something else for this? Or, like somebody in the band has the answer for whatever the problem is. So I think we're able to very quickly produce a lot of songs, more than we actually need for the record. That was the same thing on this record. We had more songs than we actually needed. We probably have like half.
I think that's always the case. Every time I've asked Michael about that, or AK, we always have a lot more songs, and we kind of, I'm not saying you reuse them, but the ideas, those little pieces, those little ideas, right?
We always say we're going to use them, but we never do. Yeah, we never do. We always just start fresh. We're like, whatever. Let's just write some new ones.
Why would you write fresh? Like, is it just because you feel like the times have changed, or the ideas or the culture has changed around you? Because things change, right? And why would you prefer to go fresh versus, using some sort of old little nugget?
I don't know. That's a great question, but There's definitely no shortage of riffage from Steve or I. Constantly, we're constantly coming up with stuff. So I just think that maybe we think that we're writing better now. So
Yeah.
revisiting that stuff, maybe we can come up with something better.
Ken, has the technology for thrash metal, are we in the right spot now? Because when you listen to thrash metal from the early days of Kill 'Em All, it was a little rough. It was great, but it was rough. But the frequencies are sort of, today we have the sound and the production to meet the brutality of the music today. Or maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, I agree. I think the sonics today are pretty brutal. Although I will say, I've been listening to a lot of older recordings, where it's all analog tape, and going and listening back to some of that on old stereo equipment, that from the late '70s, and listening to what it sounds like sonically. And I think the only thing that I'm going to argue about against that is, we're listening to everything on phones and earbuds, and that to me is a complete travesty. Again, it's like we lost something. We're losing something listening to this full spectrum of music that's crossing all the different frequencies, and we're putting it on these little earbuds, and we're putting it through the speakers on our phone, and it just is not as impactful to me. So I agree that we're in a great time technology wise in terms of creating music that's just capable of ripping your face off, literally. But on the flip side, we're listening to these great productions on the crappiest format ever, like a tiny speaker in your phone, or a little earbud, and you can't get the full effect of listening on this kind of system. So I guess there's the yin and yang of today's technology.
Michael,
It's got to tell you something too. When you're
go.
doing these sessions, you have plugins for Pro Tools and whatever DAW you're using. So you have these plugins that are saying, "Hey, let's try to make it sound analog." So it's like now we're going the other direction, trying to get back to analog when we tried to get to digital. So we're just going back and forth with this stuff. But the analog stuff does sound way better, and the digital to analog that they're trying to accomplish in the plugins, I don't think works that well.
Michael, back in the day, like I remember watching this documentary on metal, but this was like just an old put together documentary. And they said something like, when metal first started off, or hard rock, we'll call it, the producers didn't understand it. They weren't used to these types of frequencies back in the early 80s. Did you find that to be the case when FLOTSAM was first starting off, or they've kind of figured it out by then?
Yeah, I mean, new territory for everybody, trying to dial the guitar tones in. But you hit it on the head though with Kill 'Em All. That's kind of like that's kind of the metal Bible to me, in my opinion. Like the basis for everything that I write would come from Kill 'Em All. That sound and the more the vibe that it gives off, the anger. It's got every element that you need. It's a great record. But when you talk about the technology part of it, yeah, I think we were all, we didn't know. It's just uncharted territory. A lot of the producers, they're in snare drum, go da 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 da, and what do you do with that? And they're used to it going da da, and there's all this space where they can work with, and then now you got double bass. Everything's just compressed. It's way harder to mix and produce.
I think it was King Diamond. I can't remember who told me this, but their first producer, he wasn't a metal producer. He wasn't a rock. He was just a famous sort of pop rock producer. So here's Merciful Fate, lands in his lap as a production job. And I'm not sure if it was King or not in the band, but whoever was in the band, they said, they didn't know what to do with them in a way, right? Because there weren't, now we understand how to produce a metal band, but back then it was completely what you just said, Mike. It's uncharted. And these sounds, and it's like you said, Ken, these frequencies are like this. How do you capture that? But yeah, it's a cool discussion. Did you produce the album or co-produce it?
Well, we all produce it, to some degree. I mean, I think I'm probably the guy that's, assembling the tracks and maybe making some of the decisions as far as what's needed still, or
The
you know,
Swiss
what
Army,
tracks are
the
we
Swiss
need.
Army knife. That's what.
Yeah, I need it. You know, we need this. We need a solo here. We need some extra vocals here. We need to write a new bridge on this. We need to do, you know, something here. So I'd say I'm probably, you know, the guy that's sort of assembling everything and packaging it together. But I think in terms of production, we're all very involved in the writing and the production. And it's not. I think that's the other important thing to recognize too. There's no one guy in any of this. It's really the chemistry between the entire band that is creating these records. I mean, these records, you take anybody out of the mix, it's not going to be the same record, and that's just the reality. So I just think we're in a really cool spot where, you know, for whatever reason, the chemistry is really working. And then I always make a joke, you know, when people ask in an interview, well, what's it like? And I said, well, it's like taking 5 race car drivers, sticking them in 5 race cars on a really narrow street. And, you know, the 5 guys get in, and that's, you know, FLOTSAM. We all get in, we push the pedal down, you know, like whether it's drums, bass, guitars, vocals, you know, whatever it is we're doing, we push the pedal all the way down. The car's just speeding down the road. Somehow we get to the end of the road and we don't crash, and it works really well together, and it makes a song. And somehow it works. We don't really understand how, because like the drums, I'm playing all kinds of crazy crap. Mike's playing all kinds of crazy crap. AK's singing his heart out. There's stuff everywhere. There's solos everywhere. There's all this stuff going on everywhere. And somehow it's a song that you still enjoy listening to. We don't know how it works.
Well, guys, I'll see you soon. Hopefully
Awesome.
You guys will be in Canada or maybe in California. I'll see you guys at NAMM this year or next year. But thank you very much for the interview. Good luck. And everybody, thank you for watching, and all the best.
Thank you,
Thanks
Jimmy.
so much.
Always good to talk to you, man.